From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey there, welcome to the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. Gosh, I'm gonna mess that. I will mess that up forever. As long as we should do like Cube or something. Anyways, that's Brandon. I'm Mike, back for another episode here. Gonna talk about some growth valleys. You know, in Simple Numbers world, we talk about 1 to 5 million being the black hole, but believe it or not, there are other ones too.
Oh yeah,
that's just from the book. But we're gonna get into a little bit of that today. But Brandon, how's your weekend, man?
that's pretty good. I was telling Dustin, we kicked off the podcast. I said, man, I feel like a run over dog this morning. So may have ran too hard this weekend. So,
hey, I was telling you this morning, I'm just telling my listeners, I had that ultimate old man moment where I dreamed all night my left shoulder was hurting. Like I was having dreams about how my left shoulder was hurting. And I woke up and yeah, it was hurting. It should be operated on, but yeah, just
I had to slow you down.
I willed it into existence. Yeah, that's right. I went and worked out, you know, just.
I mean, for those listening, we had the first sunny day and it was 70 degrees in Alabama this weekend. Beautiful. So everybody was outside and hustling. We got softball about to kick off tournament season. We're practicing. Mike, you got soccer with Chuck there. And so.
Oh yeah. Let's get it going, man. The parent time. And you realize real quickly for all those out there, if you got little kids, when they get into things, that's when the fun really starts. All right, man.
Fun. Let's have fun with some numbers. So, I guess, you know, we try to take feedback from our listeners and folks that enjoy the podcast of what are things you guys are dealing with. And one of the things that we're seeing with the optimism coming into 25 is folks are looking to grow again, which is fun. It's exciting. You know, it's been 23, 24 was a real challenge. Hopefully 25, we're going to have a little bit more of a tailwind for that to occur. And so we wanted to go through just kind of the valleys, as Mike mentioned, that we start to see around profitability when growth occurs. So we're not going to get into trade capital. We talked about that on a previous episode. You have to look at the titles to where we go through the cash flow implications. But just as you're sitting there and you're kind of looking at the plan for 2025, 2026, maybe even a 3 or 5 year vision, what are the things you kind of need to have your hands around as you go through this journey of growth and knowing where these cliffs are at? You know, when we're working with new clients coming on board, we do a financial strategy session with them and we'll work through forecasting what's that business going to look like profitability wise as it grows. And many times what you find is that a business will grow and be very profitable to a point, and then profitability starts to decline. And the reason it starts to decline is you have to make internal investments back into that company, most commonly in the form of people, to get to the next level. You've kind of tapped out your team. They're at full capacity. I got to go bring on talent. So we want to talk a little bit about where those valleys are at, generally speaking, and, you know, what are the things you do to kind of get through them? So
it's that overhead component, man. Like, you know, the people for sure. But a lot of people fail to map out, and I try to hone in on it with them, is that system that you're going to need to manage the influx of clients at 5 million, the equipment or the space. Yeah. I mean, those are some of the things that, in addition, I mean, the people's obviously, I think, one of the bigger ones, adding the overhead, but for people, but it's a lot of those things. I mean, man, how many times, Brandon, we have this system, the dreaded system conversion, right? The new inventory system, the
ERP, the sale, the accounting system, the CRM. Yeah, you start throwing those initials out on the call, and I just see dollar signs and inefficiencies just jumping out everywhere.
Oh, I know. And when you think about it, that convergence from 1 to 5 million, and everyone, listen, we went through it. Okay. Me and Brandon got the scars and the wounds from it, but it was really that convergence of, man, we have business coming in like crazy. So we got to hire the people ahead of time to serve it because, hey, we're growing 20%. Okay, great. Well, guess what? Those people want more benefits, or you got to upgrade the talent and you got to add that. And then it's, oh my gosh, our project management system isn't robust enough. And oh, well, we got to add that. Oh, wait, guys, we don't have any more space. We got to add that. And oh, by the way, you got to have the cash to do it all.
Yeah.
Like, right.
And all along, those people that you brought on, you're not going to keep all of them. You're going to miss on some hires. Some people are going to leave and go to other places. And now it's like, okay, I thought I had that role filled, and now I'm trying to hire it and, one for growth. So it's
one of these days, man, we should do an episode of how many times we missed on the hires.
I still have PTSD. I don't know that we can go back down that path. No. We're going to need a couch or something to talk to you out. But you look some more tangible numbers that you start to deal with. So we used to see it around 1.5 of revenue. I'd say it's a little bit more common now at about 1.7. And at that point in time, generally speaking, yourself and maybe a right-hand person are kind of the two going and making it happen, can kind of push it through. You've got a little bit of a team that you're working with. You should at 1.5 to 1.7, you should be decently profitable, because around that time is whenever you start to see the need for, in a lot of cases, more general management, almost like office management type of work. That starts to come to be. You're likely going to need some form of administrative assistance as well. You're growing a team, you're adding, and Mike, you can give your thoughts on this, but I strongly encourage the entrepreneur should be a critical key component of sales at that level.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 1.5 and you're looking to go hire a salesperson so you can get out of sales, it may work, but most of the data points we have shows no one is going to sell like the entrepreneur sells. There's something about when you're speaking to the owner of a company and the job that they can do. And so
the most successful companies I work with, sub 5 million, the most successful ones, the owner is the main driver of sales.
Definitely. So,
and by the way, real quick, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Even not sales necessarily, the brand building of the business, they're out there, right? Like, for example, so everyone knows Greg Crabtree. I mean, he was like our chief marketing officer. Greg didn't do sales calls he did occasionally, but he was out there. He was pushing and driving the business forward. So one of those, either you're making the sale, or you are the chief marketing officer, brand builder, driver of leads to your company.
To use a Greg line, when you're at that level, there's not a lot of CEOing to do. So you may have the title of CEO, but you need to be pushing and driving the business. And if you're not profitable once you get to that level, well, we got to work on some things, because like I said, you're going to go through a little bit of a valley most of the time around that 1.5 to 1.7 range, to where you're adding a couple $100,000 of overhead. And when you're 1.5 to 1.7, that's a ton. So if you're not profitable going into it, we need to work on that. The next gap that the next valley we start to see is the one we talk about in the books, 3 million. Now you can take a couple $100,000 either side of that 3 million, depending upon your business. And by the way, if you're a low gross margin dollar business, look at your gross margin dollars. If you're $10 million, but you're bringing 18% gross margin, look at gross margin as your driver around these. So at that 3 million level, now's where you start to have a little bit of a need in most cases for some managerial talent. You're typically having to upgrade your accounting and bookkeeping talent, marketing starting to enter the picture a little bit more. And you might have some middle management that you're starting to look at. So those are just a few of the areas. There can be others, but those are the ones, you got 3 or 4 folks in a lot of cases as you start to cross over that 3 mark that you're going to have to get the 5. And, we talked about this before. The thing about it is I need the people at 3.5, but I don't have the margin dollars to fully support them till I get the 5. So that's that big valley, black hole, whatever you want to call it, that really can trip people up. And there's 2 words of advice that we typically give as you're approaching that. So you want to make sure that you have a sack full of money, and you want to run as fast as you can to get through it. So, if you're growing at 5% year over year and you're thinking, hey, I want to go from 3 million to 5 million, you better find a way to increase that growth rate, because you're not going to run fast enough. And if you have very little capital, core capital, you better assess where you are and look at ways that we can potentially build that up, because you're going to need it as you go through that valley. And, hey, we've worked with some folks, and in 9, 12 months, they run through it, but they also have really strong sales engines that are producing a lot of horsepower. Once again, as Mike said, as the entrepreneur, you still should be, you're probably not completing every sale, but you should be in charge and driving the sales and marketing engine of your business at that level. So that's the next one we a lot of times see. Mike, any thoughts on that path there?
Right. No, you're spot on. I mean, the need for capital is obviously the biggest stressor at that time. And I know what we did. The self-factoring method of, as we were growing the consulting side, we did leverage a line of credit, not to fund losses, but to fund gaps of capital needs while we build for taxes, because we were not as consulting heavy at the time.
Right.
And so what we were doing was our big billings were around tax season. And so there are different techniques you can use, and obviously utilizing your local banks for potential. Remember, you're not funding losses. There's a difference.
Big difference.
Yeah. And so, the need for capital is obviously the biggest thing there, and the leveraging of your labor. Remember, as you get through this, it's figuring out ways to be more efficient and looking at your processes and procedures. And I know that's very cliche because I'm the first one to be like, oh, let me get us processes and procedures. But seriously, it's amazing when people actually have to find efficiencies in their process, they do it. And how you leverage labor through that time. And everyone knows this. I managed a firm up until we merged and all that stuff. Greg Crabtree leveraged me. There wasn't a job I didn't do. Okay. I mean, I even took trash out, salted a sidewalk. I mean, you name it in terms of my normal job I did.
Yeah.
Mike took the trash out one time, and our admin team thought there was a dead body in the dumpster.
I go out there and they're like, it smells horrible. And I'm like, it is the dumpster. There's a body in there. And here Greg threw out his old Christmas tree in a bag.
It did look like a body bag, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
It did, but when they said it smelled horrible, I'm like, it is a dumpster. I got bad news for you.
So one thing, as Mike was mentioning around capital, I want to throw in here. Let's say you're getting close to that 3 million mark. You got the vision. I want to grow to 5, 6, 7, 8, $10 million. And you go, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go get a term loan because we've calculated how much capital we need. And let's just say, I'll make up a number. It's $750,000. So you're going to get an SBA back $750,000 note that has 15-year AM on it. And you go, this is how we're going to use to fund that. I can't think of a single client off the top of my head who has successfully deployed that capital and achieved the growth that they wanted to. Now, we've got a list a mile long of folks who found a way through bootstrapping, maybe occasionally using a line of credit, whatever it may be there of getting through that gap. But that just stands out to me. Not to say it can't be done, because I'm sure there's plenty of businesses that do it every day. But I'm just saying our experience has been, as you go through that, if you're looking at outside capital in the form of debt coming in, there's usually a little bit of a different mindset around that. Mm-hmm. And when you're bootstrapping it and it's the dollars that you've had, I think what you do is you probably move in a little bit more calculated manner, because, hey, I've only got room in the next 6 months to bring on 1 hire versus if I go get the note, I bring on 4, those kind of things. And I think you're much quicker whenever you're self-funding it to when someone's not performing, to go ahead and part ways and let them go be a rock star elsewhere. Whenever you just got that, hey, I got $750,000 and I'm just slowly pulling it down, you don't feel the pain in cash. You don't act as quickly. And so once again, I'd be really cautious about going that route, because I've got a lot of stories of folks who have $750,000 in debt. They didn't grow by any substance, and none of the people that they hired when they acquired that debt are still there. So that's not a good recipe. Mm-hmm. And so you want to do it smartly, and we can kind of help guide you through that and look at it and have the planned outcomes of when, I've had a lot of conversations, which I really like lately, about the salary cap. Like, hey, we're looking to grow. When does that free up room on our salary cap? So we kind of help guide you through that. And then you get to 5. And once again, give a couple $100,000 on either side of it. We should be back to hitting, 15% of gross margin profit when we're at 5 million. And if we're not, once again, we got to look and see where are the inefficiencies. Do we have some people who aren't performing? Have we lost our way and kind of brought on maybe some clients or customers who aren't ideal fits? Those kind of things. But we should be back kind of humming along. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is you probably can run it with that structure and that team in a lot of cases until you get closer to 10 million. So that's that's a fun time. Whenever you're $7-8 million and you're bringing 15% of that to the bottom line each year, generating a lot of capital, reinvesting back in the business, that, hey, probably getting some return on your ownership too. That's a sweet spot. And then the next one's 10. So we're seeing more and more businesses at this level as part of our client base. And we've had a couple clients that have got to 10 and you hit this ceiling. It's like, man, we get to 10, we might go to 10.2, we drop to 9.7, we get to 10.3, we drop to 9.8, we get to 9.9. I mean, it's just like, how do I get above this 10 mark? And you got to think about the complexity and the size of the organization at that time. It's a different animal than whenever you were 3 million and the last time you made this substantial investment in your infrastructure. You got to think differently, and you likely need folks who've been at companies that are that size and larger as part of your executive team when you're at that level. And what most of the time happens is you've grown your team along the way to get to that 10, and they've grown with you. But now as you continue to grow, it's happening much faster, and your team just can't grow at that same rate.
There's a favorite article of mine called "Beware the Rule of 3 and 10." It can kill your company. So that it's by a guy, Hiroshi Mikitani. Man, I'm sorry if I screwed that up, but really, the whole rule means is that the dramatic changes occur when a workforce increases in multiples of 3 and 10. In other words, a company that grows from 1 to 3 employees will have changed significantly enough to require its organizational structure, employee rules, processes, and procedures, and potentially even its business model to reset.
Yep.
So that could be what you're experiencing around there. And like Brandon said, that ops person, that, man, they've been so great. I mean, oh my gosh, they got me here. Well, guess what? They don't know how to run it. Me and Brandon, like, we have grown together. I've been with this dude forever here. We even check each other on that stuff, because sometimes I'm just like, hey, man, like, I know, luckily we get to work with clients that sort of teach us along the way. Like we get, and it's like, but I've never run it either, at some of these levels that we've been through. And so, understanding what you're up against and having the awareness, and hopefully your people do too, that, hey, I'm not an ops person of a $10 million company. Maybe I'm the ops person of a 3 million, and that's
it's just a different animal. And one day they might be a great ops person at a $10 million business. They had your company grew to that level in 2 or 3 years, and it might take them 10 years to get there. You're just outpacing the growth. And so we had a client that was going through this level, and they kept hitting it, and they come to the conclusion that, hey, the team I have just isn't the same team I need to push through this. And here's the tricky part. Most of us have never hired for an executive team that's going to be familiar with running businesses that are above $10 million. And so the first time you go out and you try to hire that president, vice president, chief of marketing, chief revenue officer, whatever it is, you're probably going to swing and miss. You're going to bring someone in, and then, you're going to find out one of two things. One, I either just brought the wrong person in. And guess what? That's an expense. It takes you 6 to 8 months many times to figure that out. That's expensive. So I've burned through a lot of capital in a hire that didn't work out. Or you find out, I thought we needed this person. We really needed them for like 6 months, not forever. So a technique that we really like is the hired gun. You go and find the person who is familiar dealing in this environment at this level and larger, ahead of time, and you have the candid conversation with them. And many times they work as a contractor or a consultant. Hey, I need you for 6 months. I need you to redesign our sales process. I need you to redesign our marketing process, our ops process, whatever it may be. Put a new one in place that will allow us to support the growth that we are achieving now and will continue to achieve. And you turn it on, and it's going to cost you a ton of money for 6 or 8 months, and then you turn it off. And they put in place the things, then somebody can execute on it. Many times that person that you brought on that has grown your company, they can execute on it. They just didn't have the vision to create it. And so I like that hybrid approach many times as you get to 10 million and above. Most of the time, once you have that structure of running at 10, you can go on 2025. You're just kind of supplementing the pieces in and out as far as that part goes.
I had this person knows who he is if he's listening. One of my clients that we've grown, I've been with him from $4 million, and now he's a lot bigger, a lot. So one of the things that they did is, and you sort of, you saw it play out, but he is still the consultant master. Hey, I need a training program. I'm going to go out and hire someone to implement one. Hey, I need to improve my biz dev. I'm going to go out and hire it. And these are consultants along the way to put this stuff in place. And yeah, some of these times are these big expenses, but it was an excellent use of that consulting class out there of people that have done it. And obviously he tapped into a network to find quality. These aren't the people that live more than 40 miles away, carry a briefcase and everything. They were legit. And he utilized them and hey, his team, oh my gosh, I got to get my team better to run this. Well, I'm hiring a performance coach to come in and work with every one of them. Hey, I'm in that. And so he did that along the way. And it was fascinating to watch them utilize that group of consultants to take it to the next level.
So there's two things at each of those that we mentioned, 1.5 to 1.7, 3 million, around 10 million, that you need to make sure are in place. So the first, profitability. If I'm not hitting that minimum 15% of gross margin target, I need to check because you're going to be skating on thin ice going into it with a model that's not truly hitting its highest level of profitability. And the second thing you need to look at is your capital requirement, not just for the people, but depending upon that trade capital signature, how much capital am I going to need? And that's going to give me a better idea of how quickly can I grow and what can I work on to change that trade capital signature along the way. And so we need to have our hands around those two numbers, because if not, it's kind of like going into battle and we don't know exactly what the battlefield is going to look like, and we don't know the tactics of our enemy. And we're just hoping that because, we're pretty good soldiers, that we can just go out and take it. And it's like, that's a recipe for a lot of casualties. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, hey man, I think this was a good one today. I enjoyed that. There probably is like a million ways, not a million ways, a million more things we could talk about that you go through this. Like I said, you can just focus on people through this. Yeah. And then you can just focus on just your operational structure through it. And probably just do episode after episode of podcasts on that. So
tons of it. So as always, if you've got something you want to hear, let us know. Hey, shout out to everybody that's listening. We've been getting some folks calling in interested in working with us because they listen to the podcast, and that's always a nice shot in the arm. So if you're listening, tell other people about it. Tell your friends, your network of entrepreneurs. And we look forward to continuing this journey. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Well, next episode we're doing religion and politics, so everyone. But no, never mind. We'll talk more business stuff. All right, everyone. Have a good one. That's Brandon. I'm Mike, and we'll see you next week.
See y'all.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business, or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.